again, for those of you who joined us last week, we walked through key factors and 2.2. Today, technically, we're going to walk through 6.1 with your questions. But again, this is your session, so I want to spend like 2 seconds giving us an overview of the process. So we're just going to ground our conversation for today, and then we will dive directly into what questions you have, what issues you might be encountering, and anything you want to get a thumbs up on or talk through. So that's our mission for today. So as we know, the independent review process is made up of 5 steps. So far, you should have reviewed the criteria, read the application, maybe even completed your key factors list, and then you started in on analyzing the application. So let's talk through how far is everybody? Who's gotten through the key factors list?
I have 13 so far. I plan to finish those today.
Okay.
I've also completed my key factors list.
Okay.
Same here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I started mine too, Kelly. I'm not 100% through, I don't think. I think I may have missed one, but I think I have about 18 right now.
So, and we can certainly talk about key factors. Remember, this is for you. Has anybody started on their analysis for 2.2?
No, I have not.
Okay. That's totally okay.
That's the transition that I need help with, knowing what's coming after doing these key factors.
Okay. Fantastic. So so after your key factors, you're really going to drop into analyzing the application. So you're going to be here at step 4. So now you're going to go back into item 2.2, and you're going to take note of the 4 to 6 relevant key factors from your longer list, just for item 2.2 or 6.1, wherever you are. Then you're going to go through and you're going to start reading the question, reading the response, and determining, do you see approach deployment learning or integration, and at what level of question, basic, overall, or multiple?
Kelly, I have a question. I wrote down, and I may have written it down incorrectly, but I wrote down that we take the key factors and we use it for the next tab for the IR master. Did I write that down correctly?
Correct. You are correct.
Okay.
So on the IR master spreadsheet, see if I have it.
I think that's where I started looking at it. I got a little hung up.
Yeah. Yes. So on your IR master spreadsheet, you are going to, for each of the observations that you write, you're going to associate the relevant key factors to that comment. Okay. So this is your spreadsheet that you're going to put your observation on. So you're going to identify what kind of comment it is. Is it a plus or a minus of your strength? You're going to put in your key factor reference. So basically for 2.2, you're going to look at your entirety of the category for 2.2. And you're going to identify from the key factors list, that 18 to 24, 25, which key factors are most relevant for the entirety of category or item 2.2. You're just making note of those. Should probably come around 4 to 6 of those. From there, you're going to be doing your analysis, and you're going to identify from the 4 to 6 most relevant key factors for item 2.2, what is most relevant for this particular comment that I'm making. Does that help at all?
I think so. So when you look at like 2.2, right? 2.2a, is the action plan development. So you're going to take that to what those questions are and go back to your deliverable key factors tab and pull out those key most relevant elements. Okay.
Yep. So in the end, this is what you would end up with. Do you need me to blow it up a little bit so you see better?
So this may be a silly, so the topic, and sorry guys, but is the topic, like, how does the topic, where do you get the topic from? Is that coming from the first tab? Is that where you would put that in there?
Yeah, so that's going to come directly from the criteria.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so like you see here, and you're going to use your evaluation factors. So there's a systematic integrated approach for assessing engagement across workforce groups that undergoes routine cycles of improvement. So we're talking about the assessment of engagement, which connects here to 52A2. And we're saying we see an approach that's integrated, that has cycles of improvement, and it's deployed across workforce groups. Here's another example that's kind of less wordy. The approach for assessing engagement is systematic, well deployed, and integrated with other key processes. That's all you need to say there. And then your examples are going to support that statement.
And will you go over where you got the topic from again?
Sure. So the topic's going to come directly from the criteria question, as well as your evaluation factors, approach, deployment, learning, and integration. So you can see here, the question is about assessment of engagement. So this examiner saw a strength for assessing engagement because their approach is systematic, it's well deployed, and it's integrated.
So if it were a negative, we would be explaining why we feel that it is a negative.
Yeah, why is it an OFI? So here's an example of an OFI here. It's unclear what assessment measures are used to determine workforce satisfaction and dissatisfaction. So if we go into 52A2, the first multiple or the second multiple question, first multiple question, what methods and measures are used to determine workforce satisfaction, dissatisfaction, and engagement? So in the overall question, we're looking at just assessment of engagement. In the multiple question, we're looking at, okay, it's engagement, but we also need a method for identifying dissatisfaction and satisfaction, because those are three distinct topics.
So
Do you see how that's
just to clarify-
connecting to the question?
Yes, ma'am. So when we get to the point where we're at we've entered the first three columns here, like when you get to the topic, this is like we're basically, this is our observation of the particular thing. And then as you go on further into the columns, you're explaining, the data and then the rationale behind it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So you're think of your topic as what you believe to be true, the statement of fact, or that you as you see it. So in this case, the examiner, the fact that they saw an approach for assessing engagement that was systematic, well deployed, and integrated with other processes. That was their kind of statement of fact. They supported that statement of fact with their examples, which goes in column G. And then column H, they said, here's why I think it's important to state this fact. Because so many other things were true about this organization. Why do I want to call this particular one out? And that's where you're going to pull that back in from your key factors. And words like systematic, well deployed, those all come from the definitions of approach, deployment, learning, and integration. You do not have to get that deep if you don't want to. At this point, you can just say there's an approach for assessing engagement that's deployed with cycles of learning and integration. If you want to get into the more specifics, you can use terminology like that, and you'll find that in the definitions of those terms of the evaluation factors: approach, deployment, learning, and integration. Does that resonate with you, Jeff?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Does that resonate with anyone else? Or do we still have some confusion or unclear understanding?
Can you go through like a raw one, like pick it out of the application and just give it like a fresh one,
Sure.
just so we can see from point A to B?
Sure. Why don't we can stick with this one. Give me 1 second. Let me pull up the case study.
Forgive me if this has already clicked for everybody else.
I'm a
You're good.
visual person as well, so I
You're
think that
fine.
walking through it would be great.
Okay. So let's start with the key factors. Put that up to you. Okay. So we're going to make an assumption that this is our key factors list. We've pulled this from where? Where does the key factors list come from?
Organizational profile.
Yes, it does. The organizational profile. So you've made that list or are in the process of making that list. Okay. Now I'm going to go into the book. Let me pull that up real quick. All right. So let's assume that I'm getting ready to do an evaluation of 5.2. Okay. So the three resources I'm going to have immediately available for myself are the key factors list that I've created, the criteria, and the application. In this case, the case study. I'm going to start reading the criteria. So let's talk about 5.2A2. Assessment of engagement. So the criteria is asking for what methods are used at the overall level, just at the overall level. How does this organization assess workforce engagement? What assessment methods do they use to determine workforce satisfaction, dissatisfaction, and engagement? How do those measures and methods vary across workforce groups and segments? And how do you use those indicators to assess and improve workforce engagement and retention? Okay, so that's what the criteria is asking for 5.2A2. Do we all agree with that?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We all know where we are right now, right?
Yep.
Okay. From my key factors list, a couple of things stand out to me for assessment of engagement and the importance of assessing engagement, right? So their culture is to foster an inclusive, innovative, and customer-centric environment where all employees feel are empowered to excel, collaborate, make meaningful impact on our community's progress. So that's a pretty bold culture statement. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, I want to make sure, or the organization should want to make sure that they are living up to what they want their culture to look like. The best way to do that is to evaluate the assessment of engagement. So I'm going to pull out culture as a key factor. Looking at who my workforce profile is. Because remember, when we got into the multiple level questions, they were asking about how do these things differ across your various workforce segments? Well, I need to know who those segments are as part of my assessment. And then finally, understanding what their drivers are. So we understand that they're assessing completely and not just focusing on one particular area. Because they said all of these 7 drivers are important to our employees. Therefore, they would need to assess across all 7. Any questions on my logic so far?
Oh, I'm following.
You're following, okay. So we're just going to lift those out of here. And we're going to put that in to our spread, to our notes that we're taking on the side. Okay, so we're going to lift 3, we're going to lift 5, and we're going to lift 6. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna start fresh.
No, there's no perfect way to do it, but would 7 possibly be like some of the challenges so that you can get that in through your engagement survey? Some of that.
Say it one more time, Katie.
Number 7, like workforce challenges. They talk a lot about how getting skilled workers is challenging. Like, I'm wondering if that's something that you may also flag for an engagement portion.
Absolutely, because if they have workforce challenges, they need to understand, particularly high turnover. They need to understand what's the dissatisfied.
Sure. Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
there's no perfect
absolutely.
way, but just want to make sure that resonated with you. Okay.
Yep, you're right on track. That's exactly the type of thinking you're going to go through. What part of this key factors list do I really need to understand about the organization so that I can make a meaningful observation for them?
Sure.
Okay, so let's go over to our. I'm gonna do a blank one. So I'm gonna pull. We said 3. And then I think it was in the strategic weaknesses where they're looking for they have a weakness of skilled workforce availability.
Yep. It was also 7, but it looks like you have it captured few workforce challenges. That said something, but I think 22 works or whatever that was too.
That's perfect. And then I think weaknesses would be
Yes, 20,
one,
yes,
right?
yes.
Because if you don't have engaged employees, they're leaving and you don't have a pool of people to backfill them.
Mhm.
Is this key factors list that we're looking at, is this what you would consider with batching them together? You said there were different people who bullet list or batch them.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so some people might have put down here, they might have put threats, opportunities, weaknesses, and strengths all together. You can see up here where we put mission, vision, values, and culture all together.
Got it.
No right or wrong answer. No right or wrong answer. So all I'm doing at this point, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to focus on 5282. I want to go to my key factors list and I'm going to identify what's really important for this particular evaluation of 5282, right? We'll come in here. You don't have to type this in. You have a drop down. This particular one I was building for something else and I didn't put the drop downs in. Okay, so I'm going to select 5282. So now we're ready to go into our case study. And I'm gonna scroll on my other screen so you don't have to see that. Painful. Scroll. Okay. All right. Can you guys see the case study?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So now we're just going to read this section. I'll be brief, but so we designed an annual employee engagement survey to evaluate key aspects of engagement. What does that sound like to anybody? Anyone?
It's their assessment method.
Assessment.
Sounds like an approach to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. The questions are customized on whether employees perform field or office duties. Does that sound segmented?
Yes.
Okay. Questions are reviewed for improvement after each survey cycle.
Learning.
Learning.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2021, the scores were declining, so they assigned an HPT to investigate. Remember, that's their kind of performance improvement teams. They had a third-party consultant analysis, and there was a shift from pay and benefits to safety and security and work-life balance. So originally they were focused on pay and benefits. They've moved, now the workforce really wants safety, security, and work-life balance. So they did some analysis. So then they addressed that by modifying processes. And now because of that, they've been recognized as the best place to work. So now they're saying, okay, we conduct this survey 2 months before the annual strategic planning cycle to ensure that that's available for strategic planning. What does that sound like?
Deployment.
Deployment. It also is integration. Because you've got the engagement process that's now feeding into the strategic planning process. So they say, since all employees have TARDIS accounts, we administer the survey electronically through TARDIS. So that's another example of deployment. And they use a third party to aggregate the results. Okay. So what I will do now is I'll say, man, that's a pretty strong thing that they're doing for assessment of engagement. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So let's go write this down. So when we were looking at, so now I've got kind of 3 things sitting up here. I've got my criteria, I've got my case study, and I have my worksheet. So let's go back. The criteria says, how do you assess workforce engagement? What methods or measures do they use to determine satisfaction, dissatisfaction, and workforce engagement? How do these methods and measures differ across workforce groups and segments? How do you use these and other indicators to assess and improve workforce engagement and retention? So, reading the multiple level questions based on what we read in the criteria, do you feel like they answered pretty deeply into those multiple level questions? So what I mean by that is, do they talk about how the methods differ across the workforce groups? Did they talk about how they use those indicators to create performance improvement teams, to evaluate and make modifications? So did we see examples of that?
Yes.
Yes. So do you think that they're answering into the multiple level question for this particular one?
Yes.
I think so too. Okay. So now we're going to say, okay, my observations at the multiple level. All right. Well, when we were reading the case study, we found so when we were reading the case study, we found several cool things here, right? So we saw approach, deployment, learning, and integration that we talked through. So for my topic, I would say something like evidence. Now remember, this is my truth statement. This is what I believe to be true about this particular area. Okay? Have I lost anybody so far?
Good here?
Still here.
You're still hanging on?
Still here.
Lindsay, how you doing? You hanging in there?
Maybe by a thread, but I'm hanging.
It's okay. As long as your fingernails are still there, it's all still good. Okay. So step statement of truth. This is what I believe to be true based on what I've read. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, okay, this is why I believe the topic example to be true. I forgot to put my plus here. Okay. So for the approach, and this is just the way I do it. You don't have to write it down this way. This is how my brain thinks. So I'm going to say, I saw an approach. So they do an annual survey to evaluate key aspects of engagement. And I picked that up from right here. Any questions on that? Okay. I also saw deployment that this goes to all employees right here.
Through TARDIS.
Through TARDIS. Do we agree so far?
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay. Do you see how I'm lifting this evidence directly from the application?
Yes, this is really helpful.
Excellent. I'm not making up words here. I'm just straight up dropping it down. Okay. So now I'm going to pick up if I saw any learning. Well, they say that they improve it. They review it for improvement after each cycle. They've got evidence of that using their improvement team. Now, here's what gets tricky about learning. Yes, they say they have a cycle of improvement, but their evidence of that, their example of that improvement, didn't improve the assessment process itself. It improved other processes, such as training, to address the outcomes of the assessment. Do you see where I'm coming from? Have I lost anybody?
No, this is good. I can follow this.
Can you follow this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so be careful when they give you an example of learning that you're really reading it. Are they learning and modifying the actual process they say they're learning from and modifying? Or are they taking the results of the process and modifying other things? In this case, that's an outcome. They're taking a result and modifying other things. So actually, while they said they do an improvement cycle, I don't really see any evidence of that beyond them just saying it. So for my L, I'm going to say no evidence. I'm going to just leave it at that. You may be able to turn that into an OFI later, but for this purpose, I'm just going to say there's no evidence of an L. And then my integration, my I, we saw that it is integrated with the SPP. So the strategic planning process has a dependency on this survey going out and results coming from it. It also looks like this strategic planning process is impacting or has impacted their workforce development processes. And their recognition process. So for this, I'm going to say have I lost anyone?
No.
Lindsay, are you still hanging on?
Still here. I'm typing it with you so I can follow along as my example in my chart.
Oh. Okay. So I've got my topic sentence, which is from the criteria and the application. What do I believe to be true? What do I know at this point? I know at this point that there is evidence of approach deployment. Remember, I wrote this and I'm like, oh, it actually isn't learning. So let me go back and modify my statement of truth. Because when I really started thinking about my evidence for learning, I saw, oh, that's not learning for this process. That's learning for other processes. So now I'm balancing and truing up my topic sentence and my examples. Now I'm going to go into my relevance. Well, who cares what their why should they care that they have this process and that they should continue to use it? That's going to come directly from your key factors. I found my key factors again. I have too many things up. Okay. I'm going to pull out my key factors list already. Again. Now remember, we already said that we've identified some things that were important, we felt were important. Specifically the culture, the segmentation of a workforce. You know what? Oh, wait. We said that was important. And we said that there was multiple level. We didn't say that this was segmented anywhere. So what if we say there's an annual survey, a segmented annual survey? So now do you see the thread from these are the key factors I thought were going to be most important for this? I saw evidence of it, but I didn't talk about it in my evidence. So they talked about the drivers that they talked about 2 drivers of engagement that they used, that they worked on based on outcomes, safety and security, and work life balance. Engagement drivers are not probably as important if we think about it for the assessment of engagement at this point. It's going to be very important when I'm in 7.3. I'm looking for results because I want to see, do we have results for the engagement around safety and security, fairness, work-life balance, community support, and so on. So now that I'm really thinking about it, I can go back into my key factors reference and I say, you know what? That wasn't as important for the assessment of engagement as I thought it might be. So now we come to workforce challenges. That's a pretty big one. So we need engagement. We need engaged employees to stay. Because I can't just go out and start hiring people. The pool is too small. So we saw that in both workforce challenges and in context went dark. We saw that in our strategic weaknesses. Right? So you know what I'm thinking? They really need to keep this process and keep growing this process and keep strengthening this process. So we want to give them a pat on the back because they've got some pretty big challenges that dropping this process might have a real negative impact on. So I'm going to go over to my relevance and I want to say something in the neighborhood of I hit the wrong button. You can say it any way you want to say it. It's just what came to mind right that moment. So basically, I'm saying my relevance is as the organization has a workforce challenge and strategic weakness of availability of skilled workforce members, continuing to strengthen and leverage the results from the engagement assessment process may be key. Any questions up to this point? Have I left anybody in the dust? Okay. Is this helpful?
Yes, this is very helpful.
All right, I'm getting some thumbs up. Fantastic. Lindsay, how you doing?
So we won't have one of these for every single key factor that we have wrote down. It'll be kind of merging all of these to see how the ADLI is being processed for that key factor.
Yeah, for the process. Yes.
Okay.
And the key factor really is used for relevance. So why does the organization care about either addressing this OFE or patting themselves on the back for this strength. And that's where the key factor, knowing key facts about the organization helps us connect that what's in it for me statement.
Okay.
Okay. And so now I'm ready to just write out my evaluation factors. Now remember, you've got 4 columns. You're going to pick one from each column. So we saw approach, deployment, and integration. I'm going to double check here. Do I have examples for approach, deployment, integration? And I do. So these 2 columns match. So my evaluation factors are approach, deployment, integration. And now we have done a full assessment of 5282. Jeff, did you have a question?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I don't know why the little thing lit up there, like, oh,
Say it again.
it's all good. Yeah.
Will you go over the other drop downs that are in our evaluation factors? Because I see LETCIN.
You should have, oh, those are for your results.
Ah, okay.
The results are levels, trends, comparisons, and integration. I had to put IN for the second integration because it wouldn't
Okay.
let me put integration twice. So when you get to your 7-1 that you're going to evaluate, you'll use Let's See instead of Adley.
Got it.
I'm going to call on my return people. Teresa, you knew that was coming, didn't you? Tell me a
I was
little bit
hoping
about how
not.
this matches up to your process, or any pro tips for the folks trying to transition into this.
No, I think you explained it very well. It actually helped me some to take it one step at a time and not get bogged down in all of it at once
Yes.
and make sure they circle back to each other.
Yes. That makes for a strong observation. Thank you. Lila, do you have any? My long-term master examiner sitting on here. Lila, what do you think?
Well, I'm sitting here listening, gathering information for training, actually. So when we get them in the classroom, we can anticipate some of the questions. Because I can tell you all, just because everybody's not here, people who are at home and not here are having the same questions. So I am sitting here listening to your questions so we can be prepared in training. And you all have asked excellent questions.
I'm gonna give kudos to this group. Thank you for continuing to show up. Hopefully this is going to continue to be of some value to you.
And what's the link? I know that you gave us a goal of 18 to 25 of the key factors. What about on this IR master? Like, how are we going to know we have a good stopping point?
Around 6 of these observations for 226171. Make sure you get at least 1 strength and 1 OFE for 226171. Don't stop there, but don't spend 3 hours pulling up strengths and you ran out of time to do any OFEs. Remember, OFIs are gaps in what the criteria asks for versus what the applicant gave you. So we have a potential OFI right here. There's no cycle of learning. Also, remember when we were reading the criteria, remember there was a question on workforce satisfaction, dissatisfaction. They didn't talk about that. So there's a gap there. So that's an OFI. In this particular case, I would probably write that as an OFI before I'd write the cycle of learning one as an OFI.
Kelly, even if they don't talk about it in their narrative and they show us the results, we give credit for that, correct? For the
Can.
satisfaction, dissatisfaction.
Yeah, you can. As long as it meets the definition of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. So that's where you're going to pull up your criteria book. You're going to go back into your glossary and say, well, what really? So we can't just say that the low end of a satisfaction, a pure satisfaction survey. We can't just say the low end of those results are dissatisfaction results.
Right. It needs to specifically be dissatisfaction results.
That's right. Because that's what the book calls for. And we know that from the notes, and we know that from the glossary. So yeah, you will know your measure of success. You will know you are successful if you're around 18 to 25 key factors. And you have around 6 comments that are some combination of strengths and OFIs for 2-2, 6-1, and 7-1. All right, I'm showing we have about 4 minutes left on our time today, and I'm here for whatever. So if you need to stay longer, stay longer. Let's do it. But I want to make sure we've talked through any questions. Anything else? Did I lose you somewhere you want to go back and recap? Rebecca and Rachel, you guys have been really quiet.
I'm just trying to go, I'm just going back and forth with the application, digging it into a little bit. So I'm sure I may have more questions, Kelly, and if so, I'll reach out to you directly. But I think once I go through one by myself, it will help.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, and remember, this is practice. So we want you to go through this exercise so that you can come to training with questions as well. All right, Susan, Teresa, any pro tips for the road before we wrap up today?
Well, like I said at the last year's training, that the key factors is my best friend. So it really helps to get those documented and definitely go back to them. It really helps you understand how they've laid things out in the rest of the application.
That's right. That's right. So don't skip that step. Lila, any words of encouragement or pro tips for the road?
I think y'all are doing great. Just if you guys are still struggling with this, don't wait to do the next one. Do it immediately when you get off of here. Because if you don't, by the time you've waited a day and try to come back to this, most people would have a tendency to struggle a little bit again. So just as soon as you can, go ahead and do another one.
Just to get past that writer's block.
Yeah. And Kelly, I do have a couple of questions just for you for about how we want to present a couple of these things.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We can talk.
Because I was looking at it, it's like, okay, I think that may be different than what I was doing before. So I want to make sure I'm on the same page you are.
That would be great. That would be great. All right. Well, if there are no additional questions or concerns at this time, I'm here for you. Please, 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 please don't get stuck. I'm sorry. You will get stuck. Don't stay stuck. Give me a
Thank
shout out.
you. Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks.
thanks, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks, you as well.